Hey, super fun marketers, exciting news! I have a giveaway for you. I have partnered up with the awesome team at the Product Marketing Alliance for a super fun giveaway that you don't want to miss out on. The Product Marketing Summit is coming up in Amsterdam on the 16th and 17th of May at the Akura Hotel. And guess what? Thanks to PMA, I have a ticket to give away to one of my lucky listeners. I personally am super excited to be attending the Product Marketing Summit to learn from experts from Unilever, Amazon, WhatsApp, and so many more amazing places. But I'm also really looking forward to meeting people, sharing ideas, and getting to hear from other PMMs and hear about the similar challenges that they have in their roles too. So make sure you don't miss out on entering. Click on the link in the episode description to be in to win. The winner will be drawn on the 3rd of May by the PMA team, so make sure that you enter before then. And I also have an exclusive discount code that you can use too. If you want to get 15% off your ticket, just use my code SUPERFUN15 when you go to sign up at the link in my description. But yeah, I hope to see you at the Product Marketing Summit. And now it's time for the podcast. Have we finally reached peak subscription? Yeah, I'm gonna just put that out there. Literally everything is a subscription now. And yeah, a lot of things make sense to be subscription, but like, does really everything have to be a subscription? And also another question that I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna put it out there. Are subscriptions just a sexier, monetized version of gated content for creators? That's the question. That's what I'm asking today on the Super Fun Marketing Podcast. My name is Victoria. I am the host of the Super Fun Marketing Podcast. Thank you if you have rated and subscribed to the podcast. Please keep doing that. I really appreciate it. Back to what I'm going to be talking about today, which is subscriptions. Have we reached peak subscription? We're going to be talking about that today. And like I said at the start, these days, it really does feel like you can get a subscription to anything and everything. And the subscription economy, if you haven't heard of that term before, the subscription economy, it is alive and well. And there are so many things. I just made a little list for myself of things that I can think of that are subscriptions, like shavers, olive oil, soap, pet food, deodorant. I have a deodorant subscription, just putting that out there. Cars, fashion. Those are just a few kind of obscure kind of ones. But then, of course, there's SaaS, so software as a service, SaaS, S-A-A-S. SaaS, I'm not talking about SaaS in this episode, so remove SaaS from your mind. I will talk about it one more time to just put it out there, but the whole premise of when I'm talking about peak subscription, I'm not talking about SaaS today. Also, there's curation as a service. Not sure if you've heard of that one before, CAS, and then also everything as a service. But also music. I was listening to Spotify as I was making this episode. I've got a subscription to Spotify. I've got the family plan, with a duo or whatever it's called, where it's 2 people in the household. News as subscriptions, news behind paywalls. When I was researching for this episode, I was oh, I found this great article where it's everything as a subscription. What does that mean? And I was reading about it. Oh, it's so interesting. Scroll. Paywall, register to read the rest of it. I was oh, okay. Literally, that just the irony of that. It was just oh, brilliant. Entertainment, of course, Netflix, your streaming services, content, so blogs, also communities, newsletters, and creators using subscriptions to access and then, of course, fund their content. And the kind of main area that I'm going to be talking about as we go on is more to do with that creator side when it comes to subscriptions. And aside from just the tech or the B2B subscriptions, there are also these subscriptions that are becoming more predominant or more popular for creator content and media from influencers, which I will talk a bit more about in this episode. These days, we're not just using subscriptions for work, it's also for things like media. And this trend of subscriptions is not just on the streaming services. Everything is a subscription. But subscriptions aren't a new thing. Oh, surprise! But subscriptions have actually been around for a while. And you're oh, Victoria, duh, subscription's been around for a while. But I think the thing that's interesting is we're really seeing a big increase in what things are a subscription. And I like to do in most episodes is I'm going to look at a bit of the context of like, how did we end up here? Because I find it interesting, and I think that you guys find it interesting too. But basically, the subscription economy is this idea of selling a product or service to receive recurring revenue at regular intervals rather than a single one-time transaction. So you are receiving a product or service on a recurring base because you are also paying money at a regular recurring interval, not just a one-off transaction. So here's a little bit about what has happened in the subscription world in the past few hundred years. So a bit of an evolution, right? So subscriptions can be traced back a few centuries. And some of the earliest examples of subscriptions was publishing. Newspapers and magazines have been offered as a subscription since the 17th century. And then also this was used for milk or ice way back when. And I think even into the 20th century, those newspaper subscriptions still a thing now. But like the milk or those kind of things, like it's still pretty common, like a few hundred years on from when they first started. Then into the mid 20th century, this is when things like cable television, phone services, that's when this started to become a little bit more widespread than just like physical goods like the newspaper or milk. Then into the late 20th century, when we started to get the internet, so the late 1990s and early 2000s, we had a big jump forward with the internet. And so now we had subscriptions for internet access. And this is also where we start to see SaaS. Like I said, I'm not really focusing this episode on SaaS, but this is just an interesting little note. It's like Salesforce, late 90s, that's when that subscription over the internet became a bit more of a thing. And before this, like software wasn't really offered like that. It was like you had these big investments in hardware. It was a whole thing. You didn't just have the same kind of flexibility or choice that you have now. And flexibility and choice, that's a big part of like why the subscription economy, why that works quite well as well. And then into the 21st century, so this is when like now we're seeing the subscription economy becoming like huge. There's things now like digital payment online, the internet access, like development that you can do with e-commerce. What that has been able to open up for subscriptions is really huge. And the Adobe Creative Cloud, that's a really interesting one that I'm going to touch on very briefly. But then also there's the streaming services like Netflix, Spotify, etc. that you can get on a subscription basis. But with Adobe, like that's a really interesting one, Adobe Creative Cloud. So Adobe Photoshop was released at the end of the 80s and was sold as like a standalone software. So you like just buy Adobe Photoshop. And then every time that there was like a major update, then you had to buy like the new version of Photoshop to use. Then in 2013, Adobe shifted to the subscription model, and that wasn't just Photoshop anymore, it was Adobe Creative Cloud. So it was products grouped together and you were paying for that bigger product range, but then also it was the continuous updates and the cloud storage. And so you're paying for that on like a monthly or annual fee. For the business, it was transitioned for like revenue purposes to have a more steady revenue stream, so that recurring revenue, but then also reduced piracy because it was like moving from a physical disk onto a cloud service. And then it also meant that their tools were more accessible to a wider audience. And at the time, it had like some kind of mixed reactions when it was released, but then like now it's so normal that we don't even think about it basically. And then into the 2010s, so this is also where we see these things like those subscription boxes. So beauty boxes or food, like the delivery boxes like for meals and stuff like that, into that subscription model of those physical goods. But then with e-commerce, it's able to come into more of a curated, personalized, like quite niche audience as well. We've come a long way since like milk. But nowadays, we all have a lot of subscriptions. And I don't think this is a very surprising statement that I've just made. When I was researching for this podcast, I found some little data. I'll link every article that I reference in the show notes. But according to this data from CBS, the average American spends $219 a month on subscription services. So that's a lot. And this comes back to convenience and selection. So we have choice, but we're also able to personalize things, but it's also very convenient, some of these like subscription services. And then also from the business side of things, people can make more money over time with subscriptions. So like that recurring monthly revenue. And also really interesting to note in this article, what they said is that subscriptions that cost less than $20 a month are more likely to go uncancelled. The price is able to fly under the radar and it's a little bit easier to forget about it. I think when I thought about this for myself, I was thinking about like Amazon Prime. I think that's one of the ones where it's so small in comparison to like some of the other subscriptions where I almost forget that one is like going on. Like a YouTube Premium subscription is much more substantial, whereas like a Amazon Prime is on that smaller end. So it's like easier to forget about that one. And then some data from a Forbes article that I saw, it said 95% of Americans now pay for more than one streaming service. And this has been increasing as well. Almost half of the people in the same survey said that they have more than 3 streaming services. Another report that I found said that millennials on average have 17 entertainment and media subscriptions, that's a lot. It was like entertainment and media. So I think it's a little bit of a broader one. I was thinking about for myself, like a lot of the subscriptions that I have, for example, like I said before, like deodorant subscription. I think I have pretty much like almost all of the streaming services, although I did just cancel Netflix because I wasn't really watching anything on Netflix. At the moment, I'm watching a lot of stuff on Apple TV. But as soon as there's not something that I'm going to be watching, I'm going to cancel it. That's just how I manage that. YouTube subscription, some apps for like editing software, like on my phone, on my computer, some health apps for tracking like health, like protein powder, like a shake powder one, fitness, like a gym one. And then I don't have this one yet, but the place that I go and get my nails done now offers a subscription as well. So if you can dream it, you can make it into a subscription. If you can dream it, you can subscribe it. So that's, there, like I said before, you can literally like make everything a subscription. Like this trend that we're seeing is not just like in the digital landscape in terms of digital media consumption, but it's a wider thing about like personalized entertainment and personalized experience and convenience across multiple places as well. However, subscriptions are getting more expensive. So 44% of people say that their subscription costs have increased over the last year. I know that I feel like I'm always getting an update from like Disney or Spotify. Oh, your subscriptions price is increasing. But people are still finding workarounds. So 56% of people still access streaming services through friends and family accounts. But of course, a lot of these channels are trying to crack down on it. And when they do enforce stricter rules, Disney Plus is the one that's most likely to be cancelled. 24% of people have cancelled 3 or more streaming subscriptions over the past 2 years. So again, like the subscription, like I said before, like it offers a lot of flexibility, but this also means that people are like cancelling things as they need to as well. But like I said at the start, one of the things that I wanted to talk a bit more about today is on the creator side of subscriptions, because something really interesting happened this week to an entertainment channel that I watch on YouTube, and this kind of sparked this like thought in my mind, so I wanted to talk a little bit about it. Like I've mentioned a bit about some of the physical goods of subscriptions and also like the media entertainment, like the Netflix, Spotify, but we're also seeing these like smaller influencers and content creators also having these subscription models with their content creation that they do as well. And we have talked a little bit about brands partnering, especially on the B2B side and on this podcast, like partnering with creators and influencers in the B2B space. They are looking for these other revenue streams to help fund the content creation that they're doing. And this can also come from subscriptions from their audience. So not just like the partner, like sponsored post kind of thing. Maybe you've heard of these ones before. So like Patreon is a really popular one, or Substack. So Patreon came about in 2013, and it's a platform where people can basically like create these different memberships for their audience, and then you can have like different levels of access to like different content or different perks or things like that to help support the creator or the band or whoever it is that you're a fan of. You can help support them, and those can be manually set by the creator or the person who set up the Patreon for these different tiers. Creators on Patreon, like a total, earn $100 million per month, And there are over 200,000 creators with at least one patron. So like at least one supporter. There are about 12 million individual pledges per month that go through Patreon. And it attracts over 120 million monthly website visitors. It's interesting, Patreon had a bit of a dip in 2021, so like during the pandemic, and has started to come up again now, which is quite interesting because this thing about, everything's becoming a subscription. It tracks. I'm just saying, it tracks. Another one, Substack. So I have a Substack, but I don't have a monetized version of it. I just use it for like when I feel like posting a blog. I'm not very good at keeping up with that, but Substack launched in 2017, a little bit of a newer one compared with Patreon, but it was mainly for doing paid email newsletters. So the company basically they want to help writers reach their audience and then get money from that as well. They have over 2 million paid subscriptions on Substack out of 35 million active subscriptions on the platform. It has more than 20 million monthly active users, and then more than 17,000 writers get paid on Substack. Combining the top 10 authors on Substack, they make 25 million per year. Those are just a couple of the really big ones, but there's also some others like Buy Me a Coffee, Ghost, OnlyFans, of course, and then also Medium. There's much more, but people are also making their own platforms now. One of the things that kind of sparked this conversation in my mind this week was these creators from a YouTube channel called Watcher, Watcher, and I've been watching Watcher content since they were on BuzzFeed, but they left BuzzFeed I think in 2019 or something like that. And then they made their new brand, Watcher, in 2019, and they create like these different kind of like seasons of shows, and then they post those on YouTube. And typically they have had a few ads here and there on every episode. And recently they were like, with something big is coming, like they were doing this like big countdown and all their fans were getting like super excited. And then when it got to the announcement was that they're leaving YouTube and they're not posting their content on YouTube anymore, but instead they've made their own streaming platform, and now you will have to pay $6 a month to see the shows that they are creating. There was a lot of outrage. There still is a lot of outrage. This is going on now. If you go and have a look, this is happening like as we speak. At the moment, it's the evening of Monday, the 22nd of April, and they haven't posted a statement yet. So I'm keeping an eye out to see like what happens, because they released this announcement at the end of last week. Still no news yet on how they are going to respond to the really negative backlash, but we'll keep an eye out for that. But yeah, like I said, they want their audience to pay $6 a month for this. And currently in the US, Netflix with ads, so not the ad-free one, but like Netflix with ads is around $7 a month. And there on Netflix are over 6,000 movie series and specials on Netflix. And still some people won't spend money on Netflix because they can't afford to do that. But then these creators are asking people to pay $6 a month to watch just their own content. And they already had a Patreon, and apparently their Patreon was making people think around about $100K a month. So pretty substantial. But some of the reasons why they said they are moving to a paid subscription was because they want to rely less on advertising and make things more sustainable for themselves. And what they're going to be doing is they will release like the teasers and the trailers on YouTube, but the full seasons will go on their streaming service. Like I said, the response to this from their fans was like incredibly negative. It was very negative. And there's a couple of great comments that really stand out on their videos. So from someone called Diamond Master 115, said, rule number 1 of the internet, never take something away from users that was originally free and put it behind a paywall. And then another one from this person called Kate287 said, we don't mind advertisements. We know it helps pay for the content we love. We'd rather watch a 2-minute long silly skit ad for free than pay for another streaming service. And then one more, which just stand out, is from Kim the Misfit. It said, the title of this should have been Goodbye to Most of Our Fan Base. Why in the world would you guys think most of us would be willing to add yet another subscription fee to our monthly bills? We might love you, but we ain't all rich enough to afford 10 billion subscription streaming services at once. And I want to talk about this a bit because I think it's an interesting lesson for creators, because there are creators out there that paywall their content and people are happy to pay for that. But why didn't this one work? So I think that some of those comments pointed out really well. So what they were doing was they were offering something for free, and now they have switched, and that content that was available for free for 4 or 5 years is now going behind a paywall. And people don't mind ads. That's what the audience has said. Like, they don't mind ads, and they're also sick of subscriptions. People don't want another subscription just for the sake of another subscription. I'm not sure if you've also seen this trend, but a lot of people are returning back to having owned physical media. So people going back to buying like DVDs and records and CDs of like their favorite things. Like, they want to actually physically own the things that are their favorites versus like buying the digital version of it on like Amazon or YouTube or something like that. And one thing that's quite interesting is what's happening with this is that DVD prices of, for example, like box sets are going up. So if you try to buy like a box set of like Friends now on DVD, it is really expensive. And there's this kind of conversation around like, how can you actually own something if it's digital versus owning something that's physical? And so there's almost this kind of like return to wanting to own the physical version of it. So people are hunting out their favorite CDs and DVDs, and they're even starting to burn, if you don't know what burn means, I don't know if everyone knows that, create their own like DVDs again so that they have the physical versions of them. And for everyday consumers, they are starting to experience this thing called subscription fatigue. And that's a great term that relates to this as well. This is a definition that I found online on Paddle's website. And they said subscription fatigue is a feeling of overwhelm and frustration experienced by consumers who find themselves inundated with subscription services and products. It is often associated with reactions to the increase in streaming services in the media and entertainment industry, but also applies to FMCG product subscriptions and can be a risk in software. But basically, when it comes down to it, people are already spending a lot on subscriptions. And one of the big things in this example for these creators, which I think is important to keep in mind if you're a creator that wants to monetize what you're doing, is they were giving something away for free. Of course, they were ads, but they were giving something away for free to their audience, and then they took that away from them. And the creators expected that their audience would pay $6 for this, and they weren't respectful. They weren't respectful about it. Who has done this well? So in 2020, I'm not sure if you recall, but there was the big moment where the now infamous Bon Appetit YouTube channel fell apart, and some of the personalities from that at the time went on to do their own thing, like release books and start YouTube channels, and they all had different like varying levels of popularity and success. And Molly Baz is one of the interesting ones who didn't just straight away go and start a YouTube channel. Instead, when Bon Appetit fell, what she did is she launched a Patreon page instead. And so she had a recipe club where people could subscribe and they'd get a weekly recipe and exclusive content for $5 a month. And this is quite interesting because a lot of other people went just straight to YouTube and then started doing like their weekly YouTube like videos. However, she went to Patreon, where she said that she was able to have a little bit more control, but also have that kind of recurring revenue as well. And that was quite an interesting one because there was the moment there where she could go to YouTube to start giving that all away, or go to Patreon. And instead she chose to go to Patreon, and there wasn't a huge outrage. It wasn't a big backlash because that was what she started doing from the outset when this happened. So the expectation was always that if you want this exclusive stuff, like this is how you get it. It wasn't given away first for free and then taken away. So if you're a creator and you're thinking about how you can monetize what you're doing, this is what I was thinking is quite interesting. So important to note, your audience probably don't care about ads as much as you are worried. They're not as worried about the ads as you maybe think that they are. If it means that the ads are funding what you're doing, and it means that they can access your content. So if you have a loyal fan base, they will understand, or a loyal audience. Fan base sounds so cringy. Loyal audience, they will understand that the ads is what's helping fund what you do. If you have a membership option, I think it's good to have a few different tiers and add things like add value rather than take value away from people. Don't alienate the audience that you have already built. If you were starting to monetize your audience, monetize your community, they're the ones who helped get you to where you are now. So don't take content away by putting it behind a paywall. Instead, if you've built enough of an audience, like these people will also pay for merch or they'll pay for membership. So for example, you could add additional things like exclusive live content or exclusive podcast episodes or behind the scenes things, etc., rather than being like, no, you just get nothing. And then if everything moves behind a paywall, it also becomes harder for you to increase your discoverability. And that also means that only some people can access your content rather than you having a wider kind of reach as well. And it can take years to build something, but only seconds to lose it as well. So again, before you go and launch a whole new kind of like paid subscription model, make sure that you talk with your audience, make sure that you're rewarding your loyal audience as well, rather than getting offside with them, because just the watcher thing, if you have a look at that, like there is not a single positive comment that is going around. It is literally, they've got offside with their audience for sure. And also, like I said before, like people understand that it takes money to make things. And if you have enough value for your audience, they will pay for it. But also be realistic that some people already have 17 plus subscriptions that they're paying for. And if they'll cancel Disney Plus, that's one that's like on the bottom of the tier, how can you make sure that they won't cancel you? So that's the thing that you just need to think about. These are luxuries, not needs for people. And so you want to make sure that your subscription, if you're going to monetize that, you monetize your content and monetize your audience, is reaching them in the right kind of way. And also be aware that there are tools out there like Dime, Rocket Money, and even now banking apps that are making it easier for people to manage their subscriptions. So if you think about how Gmail has made it even easier for people to unsubscribe from your mailing list, or how Instagram now has the least interacted with or most shown in feed grouping, like these kind of tools are also making it easier for people to manage and cancel their subscriptions. So just bear in mind, like at the start, we talked about how the $20 limit is like, if you fall under that, then it's people more likely to forget about you. Yeah, they're also going to make it like there's these tools where it shows you like how often you've used the subscription and if it's actually worth it and for you, but based on your usage and all of that kind of stuff. So that's just something that's important to remember as well. And one of the recurring things that was coming up with Watcher is they were talking about how they're trying to like explain the cost of the subscription because of the cost of the production value to make this kind of content. And what the audience was actually also saying to them is it's not the production quality that we care about and what we come back for. It's a dynamic of you guys as the creators. So again, like I say, if you are going to do this, talk to your audience and see what they care about. Don't just assume that this is the right call to make because you need to monetize what you're doing. So are we at peak subscription? Maybe. Maybe. But there's also been this thing, the great unsubscribe, that's been talked about for a few years. So I think that we're not necessarily at peak subscription now. And I also think that people are willing to pay for things via subscription so long as they are getting enough value and they're also not having things taken away from them that they used to get for free. So don't put it behind a paywall if it's been out there for free. That's a very hard switch for people to make. So instead, look at evolving what you're doing to give more value that can be accessed instead. So that's just a little tip there for you creators if you're wanting to monetize what you're doing and monetize your audience. Not all of your audience wants or can afford another subscription, so be mindful of that. They still probably care about what you're doing, just not everybody can afford another $6 subscription at the moment. And also start buying your favorite TV shows on DVD now. I don't know. That's just a little one. Write that down. Think about that. But yeah, I do also think that like this idea of like subscriptions becoming like the sexy, more accepted version of gated content, I think is quite an interesting concept. So also let me know what you think. Do you agree that it's just a different way of saying gated content as well? I don't know. Let me know what you think. But I did also ask some friends of the podcast to share some of their thoughts about subscriptions so that you can hear what they have to say as well.
Hey there, this is Joe Sweeney. I'm Victoria's brother-in-law, believe it or not. What a great honor I have. I also work in marketing, content marketing, and it's fantastic to be here today. So how much do I spend a month on subscriptions? I should probably know better, but I'd say in the region of 70 to 80 euros a month. 40 of which is on my football subscriptions to watch football. How many streaming services do I pay for? It's probably a little bit worrying that I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but I'd say 6. Yes. What was the last one I signed up for? It was like, within Amazon Prime, you can like subscribe again to other parts. And it was the Warner Pass inside Amazon Prime. I don't know why you subscribe and then you're having to resubscribe to additional kind of streaming services. In France, we say le pass Warner to watch Silicon Valley, which I haven't been able to figure out any other way to watch the series Silicon Valley, but finally figured out and loving it. I think my football subscription is pretty important to me, although I don't get to watch as much of it as I used to with the kids, but I always enjoy sitting down and watching the football. Other than that, I think there's a few tools like Descript and Riverside that I'm really happy to be using, especially Descript. I think I get my money's worth 10 times over using that subscription tool. I think at least 2 or 3 I share access to. So my wife and I have some friends who have Disney Plus. We jumped on that bandwagon. And even Netflix, although, they're trying to shut that down, but I don't want this to get back to Netflix maybe, because they might sort of continue to do something about that, because I know they're cracking down, but I do continue to share a Netflix password with someone.
And now hear from another friend of the podcast, Thibaut, who is a demand marketing manager.
So do I know how much I spend a month on subscriptions? Yeah, I actually do know how much I spend because I have this little overview in Notion. So yeah, just summing that up, that's about €6 a month. And I spend that on about 4 or 5 subscriptions. The main ones being Spotify, iCloud, swap feeds, so my rented bike, and my phone bill. Maybe I'm forgetting 1 or 2, but I try to keep it pretty lean. With regards to how many streaming services I actually pay for, Spotify, I share with my brother, and Netflix, we have a family account. I think my parents pay that one, but I really don't use Netflix ever at all. I'm quite on top of my finances. Like, I know how much I'm spending month on month on subscriptions, just to keep a close eye on it. And yeah, if you dig deeper into that topic of personal finance, if you watch some YouTube stuff, read some blogs, you'll see that a lot of people in this space talk about subscriptions and how obviously they increase your monthly spending or like base spending and they eat away your savings. So I've been trying to limit them as much as possible, which is, I don't really have a lot of them, only the essentials. It's easy to stack up a lot of them. And then you end up spending, hundreds every month, which at the end of the year or over the course of 10, 15, 20, 50 years, that is a lot of money. With regards to the last streaming service I signed up for, I actually don't remember. I don't sign up to a lot of stuff, but I guess the last one is probably Spotify, which was like years ago, but I haven't really added any subscriptions since then. Creator media, like Patreon, stuff like that. I actually don't subscribe to any of those. I've definitely considered it in the past, and I'm well aware that it's like a pretty common thing to do in the YouTube space and probably also on other platforms. But yeah, I've never subbed to anything just because I probably felt like there wasn't enough value for me to actually pay to see more content or behind the scenes or whatever is offered. And most of the time you can also just get it for free on YouTube. Obviously there's ads or you might have to like wait a week later, but that's stuff I don't really mind about, or at least it's not enough to make me upgrade to like a paid plan, so to say. And then like community newsletters, also not really, just because again, I think there's so much stuff, so much value that's accessible for free. So must-have subscriptions that I think are 100% worth it. Pretty boring one, but I would say cloud storage. Yeah, not very exciting, but insanely helpful. Holds all of the files and all the important things in my digital life together. My next most important one is Spotify, just to be able to have offline music anywhere. That's just kind of a necessity. So yeah, Spotify is probably my most favorite subscription. Subscriptions that I have considered in the past, or that I've had in the past, but not anymore. Notion, I've been using Notion for years. I think it's amazing. I think back in the days, there was a limit on how many blocks you could have. And they removed that limit now just to give access to more people to the tool. But I think if they were to reintroduce that limit, I'm such a big Notion user for my personal life that I wouldn't mind paying €10 a month for it. I think it's just worth it. Other things I've considered, HelloFresh, the grocery kind of cooking plan meal delivery service. YouTube Premium, because I do spend quite a lot of time on YouTube, and I have an ad blocker now, which kind of defeats the purpose of paying for YouTube Premium. But the day that ad blockers don't really work anymore, I think I might consider upgrading to YouTube Premium. And then there's Blinkist, which is this book summary app, which I've been interested in, but never made the step. And then LinkedIn Premium, but it is quite expensive for what you get, which is basically just seeing who's viewed your profile.
Now, this next friend of the podcast wanted to remain anonymous, so you're just going to have to imagine who it is.
I don't know how much I spend every month on subscriptions, to be honest. Not really something I keep track of. Maybe I should, especially given the fact that I'm also not entirely sure how many I pay for. I would say off the top of my head, I probably have around 5 to 8, probably more 5. Yeah, maybe it's time to review it because I might be forgetting some stuff. So the last one that I signed up for is, I guess, the subscription to the gym. Yeah, my gym membership. I don't pay for any creator media at all. Yeah, don't plan to either. I think what's 1000% worth it is a Spotify subscription because we have enough ads on YouTube. I couldn't stand it on the free version of Spotify, and I want to be able to click to another song at any given time. So 1000% worth it. I do share a couple of streaming services, like the access to them. There's one that I pay for, but I'm sharing with 2 other people. And I've used a streaming service of a friend of mine in the past because I wanted to see a particular series that was only available on that streaming platform. And I think that's it.
And the final friend of the podcast that we hear from today is my old podcast co-host from the Hotel Marketing Show, Nadine, who'll be sharing about her take on subscriptions.
I have to say, these are some really good questions and actually made me think about a lot of this stuff, because if you ask me if I know how much I spend a month on subscriptions, I don't actually know. I just assume that whatever I'm paying for is what I need because I wanted to pay for it at some point. I don't know. I feel like I need to reevaluate my choices here. But no, I don't know how much I spend a month of subscriptions. I do have to say, though, that I am like a subscription leech because, for example, Netflix, Disney Plus, all of these kind of ones, Amazon Prime, I actually just leech off of someone else's subscription. I probably share access to subscriptions around 4 or 5, I would assume. And how many streaming services do you pay for is 0, because I don't pay for any because I just leech off of other people. But I do also share my subscription access. So, for example, Canva Pro or something like this, I also share my subscription there. So it's a tit for tat. Then I also do pay for creator media. So I have a newsletter I signed up to. It's basically this German politician journalist who always writes a little recap of what happened that week. And I decided to sign up because it's the easiest or a very digestible way for me to actually consume the news. I think that if I can just sit in bed with a coffee on Saturday and read what all has happened in the world or in Germany, then that's just a really nice and easy way for me to get that information that maybe otherwise I wouldn't have gotten because of some things that might be overshadowed by other things in the media. So yeah, that's just, I know that I get a good quality for what I'm paying for. So I like that. And the last thing that I signed up for was, I need to think for a second. I need to pause and think. Oh, I remember, for an AG1 subscription. I signed up for this AG1 thing and I keep getting it and I keep forgetting to unsubscribe. So I just keep getting packages and packages of this powder, which I love AG1. It's just I have a little bit of a surplus at the moment. So is there a subscription that I think is 100% worth it? I do. I think that a subscription, for example, to Netflix, which I mean, that's pretty mainstream, is 100% worth it because I use it a lot. But I also think, like I was mentioning before, the newsletter that I signed up for, the political one, I think that's 100% worth it. And then the other thing is also Canva Pro. I love Canva Pro. I use it a lot. So I also think that's 100% worth it. Yeah, honestly, I would also think that I'm consuming now, like, for example, podcasts or little video snippets or little documentaries and stuff like this. I would also pay for like single episodes or something like this, or get a subscription there because, yeah, if I see value in something, I'm more than happy to pay the price for the work that has been put in. To have someone create that content for you that you like to digest is totally worth the money, I believe.
And on to my final segment of the week. So this is things I'm thinking about this week. no action required. I just got back from a week-long solo vacation, and I was thinking about how rare and special alone time is these days. And bear in mind, I don't have any kids, so this is very much a luxury that I am able to talk about this, and it's very much a privilege. So feel free to check out if you are like, no, I don't want to hear about this. But anyway, so what I was saying, I think it's such a privilege to be able to go somewhere where there is literally nobody else but you, and it's just silence, and just what that time on your own can do. And I was like recently listening to a podcast that was talking about these penguins. They're called nesting chinstrap penguins, and they sleep 10,000 times each day. 10,000 times each day. They sleep for 4-second bursts, and it adds up to around about 11 hours over a day. And this past week, I was thinking about how if we tried to do that, it would be horrible as humans. If we tried to have 4 seconds of sleep bursts and that added up to our 11 hours of sleep, that would be horrible. But then when we have 11 hours of sleep in a block, it's amazing. So that 4 seconds at a time adding up to 11 hours is not the same as 11 hours all in a row. And I was thinking, like, for me, that's the same as like that alone time. So we often get a lot of alone time like here and there during the day. But being able to have an extended period of time by yourself where you can think or whatever, I think is like so nice. And don't get me wrong, like I love being with people, and I used to actually be really scared to be alone for a long time, be by myself, and have like alone time, like for a long time. But I just love it, and I think it's so nice, and it's such a privilege. I think what being alone can do, like for your thoughts, and I don't know, it's really nice. So also, like don't be a dick about it. If you don't be mean to people or rude to people to like have alone time. I think be respectful of your partner, be respectful of your kids or whatever. But yeah, if you have the freedom or ability, the privilege to be able to have that alone time, I think it's a really special thing, and I think that it can do a lot for your thinking. I think it's quite like meditative, quite spiritual. So yeah, that's just what I was thinking about this week. A little bit of a different one. But anyway, yeah, subscriptions. If you can dream it, you can subscribe it. I don't know if that even makes sense. But yeah, are we at peak subscription? Maybe. Should you gate everything and just call it a subscription? I don't know. I think that's funny as well. But yeah, have a great week. Comment on a brand that you like. Comment on their posts and tell the social media manager that you're doing a good job. Build somebody up this week. Give them a bit of encouragement. But yeah, have a great week. And thanks for listening to another episode of the Super Fun Marketing Podcast. Bye.